Chiseling, all in all, is a pretty simple thing. So basic mechanics on this, all you need to do is lay a line. Once you've got your line, incise it gently. Then as you go progressively deeper, push down a little harder. You can be a little bit more aggressive. You can take stronger bites each time. But do not jump. If you jump, you've basically ruined your piece and you've got to start again. And if you're chasing a giant long piece with decorative chasing all the way down it and you muck it up right at the end, you'll have sadness and regret. So I'm just going to take a little bit of quarter by one, and draw a line down the middle at the tip here. And eventually I will actually split this, but I've got a nice line on it, that's good. Making sure that it's flattened to my steel. I could either use this chisel for doing my layout, but I actually really like to use our little curve edge chisels. So these are like big old fishtail things. There's also like a straight version of that. The fishtail ones are kind of nice because you can roll with them. Hammer, there we go. So I start at the root here, a little nick, and then just slowly roll in, keeping in my line. And I'm always just rolling with the line that I have. Try not to drop out of your crease, which is easy to do. I'm already running off my line. You want your marked line to be in there well enough that you can feel it. I've done a particularly horrible job of this. The line is messing with me terribly. Anyway, I'm well off track. So I've got a pretty solid cold line in there. I'm slightly actually off my scribe line. It gives me something to pick up with the tip of the chisel. If I wanted to, I could go in and lay that in a little harder, say with more of a bull tip chisel, so more of a straight edge, something a little thicker. I can go in and mark that a little heavier. Something along these lines. And again, just making sure that you're carrying, you're not trying to strike with the whole face of the chisel. You're probably only using a half of it, or two-thirds at a time. The back portion of the chisel is sitting in the old groove, and you're just scooching along a little bit. Feel free, if you are inclined, to put a hold fast on it, or hold it between your legs, whatever you would like. Alright, so I turned a little heavy, and you can see I completely ignored my chisel, or my pencil line, but I've got a good incised line in there. Okay. This is the wonderful joys of television. Everything goes wrong when you don't want it to. So, truth of the matter, whenever you demo, things always go a little bit more sideways than they should. So, make sure your heat saturates in there well. Don't be trying to work on cold steel with this. Now, if you wanted to just bring it up a little bit and incise your line a little deeper with a little bit more softness to the steel, but without getting aggressive into it, you could do that also. And then come back, take a real deep heat on it, and just start powering into it. When you are chiseling, the brass, the bronze plate. Tell I prepped for this today, aren't you? There we go. If you're going to be chiseling through, get yourself a copper plate, brass plate, bronze plate, whatever you got. These are actually some offcuts from some hardware we were making. You don't want to cut through onto your anvil face. I don't particularly even like to cut through onto the cutting plate, which is what this is meant for, just because sometimes you'll knacker up your chisel a little bit, so it's better to have something a little softer. Do not be tempted and use lead. One day you'll be using it and the next day it'll squirt all over you. Aluminium works okay, but remember, all of these get insanely hot as you're working. So don't go ahead and grab it and be surprised that you just lost your fingertips. I always wear a glove, soft grip. You don't want to strike so hard that you start breaking bones. It's particularly unpleasant. You see how I'm rolling in? So I kind of come in at an angle, roll up, come in at an angle, roll up. And that line that I had laid in there beforehand is really handy to just keep me on track, even though my on track was very much off track. I like to try and keep my material well based down to the anvil, so if it starts to curl up, lay it down just a little flatter. So that's a pretty good baseline laid in there. I'm going to take another hot pass like that, and then I'll go through and actually split it all the way through. There really isn't much to this. You know, after you've done your punching and you've done your set downs, when you come to chiseling, it's like, oh, okay, this is just more of the same, except now it's with a sharp edge instead of a blunt edge. So be aware that your mechanics is the same. If you hold it at an angle, it's going to cut at an angle. Another fun one, if you get your geometry on your two faces slightly off, your chisel, especially on thicker material, like if you're going through an axe or you're splitting the jaw for a pair of tongs, something like that, and you have a uneven geometry through here, it will drift. And if you've got an ever so slight lean, it will drift. So what I usually do is every time I come out and cool off the tool, I'll turn it 180 degrees so that any inconsistency in that cutting edge will actually maintain somewhat center. So I'm going to go another pass, try not to bottom out as I go through. Hopefully I'll flow. And you can see in much the way that the punch got that little cold spot at the bottom. You'll see that when you're splitting or slitting, that you'll get that little cold spot as you're getting closer to the bottom. I'll see if I can get it that there again. See that? Just for an iota. Another one up here. You just get that little fade and you're like, okay, I'm getting close. I'm sucking the heat out of it. On some pieces you might need to flip it over and you will get that kind of polished line in the same manner that you would with a punch hole. But generally I like to just work from one side and just accept the fact that you are going to get rag. It's just part of the nature of it. A little flat. I'm going to the brass plate or the bronze plate, so I'll put a little bit of a kink in it so that it will hold somewhat flat without too much chatter. So I want to be able to go there. Go. And I don't want that back end floating around in the air causing me mischief. As you chisel down to the bottom, once it starts splitting, you want it to get that front edge to split, just keep chasing it all the way up. It should go pretty smoothly. So hopefully Jess can get a good angle of this as it kind of tears apart. And it will tear, it won't be a perfectly smooth cut. I've never really managed to find a way to get a really super smooth cut without getting to about this point, then turning it upright and slitting down from above. That does reduce rag a little bit. But you know, rag isn't a big deal. If you've got a Farrier's rasp or a coarse double cut bastard, you just hit it with it whilst it's hot, it'll disappear in a heartbeat. Right. little bit, so I'm coming at a slight angle. Pop in. See that cold section? There we go. I'm just going to keep pushing into that groove. Roll it up a little. Bring it off. Most of my early experience of doing this was splitting leaf spring for making knives, which I'm going to say to all of you out there that think that splitting leaf spring to make knives is a really fun and awesome idea. Just go buy some material. It saves you so much time. So you see that little bit of rag that forms down there? Yeah. So I'm going to go up, take one more heat, just slit that all the way up to the top, and then do a little bit of cleanup on it. Yeah, unless you really want the experience of slitting old beefy leaf springs, I would really recommend just go and buy yourself a nice stick of 5160. But also, there is joy in splitting those things. But if you want to make knives, go make knives. Quit splitting bar stop. But that's my opinion, it doesn't make any difference. I'm going to go grab a hefty file. It's a big old behemoth. I don't even know where that thing came from. But it does work really well. Farius rasps are perfectly applicable as well. Okay, so I've got that nicely split out, like that. If you get real close on it, you can see that little bit of rag down on that lower edge. You might see it a little better from the back side. You know, is this a big issue? Probably not, but the way I'd approach it, just knock it out of the way like that, lock it in somewhere. Clean it up. So, that's chiseling and splitting in a nutshell. Nothing too tricky there. Easy way to clean it up. Don't have to get fancy with it. If you really want to get really fancy, here's a little tip to the wise. Up at the top end, if you have problems with rag in your crotch, I recommend punching a hole up there. And you can either punch a round hole, or you can punch a teardrop hole, or you could punch a slot. So you want it to split like this. You are having problems with the dirty crotch down there, so you can put in a round hole. That gives you a lovely section, but this is going to be tricky to clean up when you separate them and forge them in. So you could go for a slot, kind of like that, which will make that a little easier to access. Or one last option, if you made a little teardrop shaped punch, like that, that would make that cleanup super easy. Okay? Have fun, go do.